Hi, my name is John Perante, and this presentation is pretty much on why we should not have to label GMO products. Okay, so just a brief overview before we get started. What is a GMO? The abbreviation GMO refers to a genetically modified organism. As we learned in class, essentially, it's taking the desirable traits of another organism, like in terms of crops like weed resistance or herbicide resistance, and transplanting them into the genome of another organism in order for the future byproducts or the future offspring to have that desirable trait. On the right hand side, you'll see a brief infographic of how this is done. Okay, so pretty much GMOs have been around a lot longer than most people think. In 1978, the first viable recombinant DNA technology, also known as genetic modification, was synthetic insulin. Up until that point, all they could really use was cow and pig pancreases in order to produce insulin that was compatible with humans. I mentioned recombinant DNA technology only because that is essentially the science behind genetic modification. The first small-scale field trials of genetically engineered plants were created in 1990, and in 1992, this was actually the first release of genetically engineered crops. And from this point on, we've seen a gradual increase in the use and production of GMOs. Here we see the global area of biotech crops. We see the U.S. here with 57.7%, includes soybeans, corn, cotton, canola, and also on the right-hand side of the graph, we can see the increase from 1996 in the use of soybeans and to the type of economy and the traits, in this case herbicide and insecticide resistance. So the question is, if we've been using and consuming GMOs for so long, why do we start labeling them now? Many governing bodies, including the EU, have recently been trying to, well, not recently, they've honestly been trying to do since the 90s, have been trying to pass legislation in order to demand the labeling for GMOs due to contaminations and recent outbreaks of undesirable products. But honestly, the real question to me is, who would they be helping? The links between health risks and the consumption of GMOs is virtually non-existent. The actual GMO part of most genetically engineered seeds is the DNA, and it's digestible in the human gastrointestinal tract. Also, numerous government agencies like the FDA and the National Academy of Sciences have conducted reviews that did not identify any health concerns in regards to the consumption of GMOs. And honestly, I mean, most Americans consume GMOs without even realizing it. A large portion of our crops are now genetically modified, and a lot of GMOs are actually present in processed snack foods because they are derivatives of things like soybean oil and corn oil. So honestly, it's not broke. Why do we have to fix it? Also, on the right-hand side, you'll see a graph showing the rapid growth and adoption of genetically engineered crops, and as the trend continues in the U.S. Essentially, the reality situation is this: the choice of labeling policy will be important in the development of markets for foods produced with use of biotechnology, and specifically with use of genetically modified organisms. In one of my cited materials, it lists pretty much 4 ultimate outcomes for the installation of a labeling process. The first one would be allowing no labeling at all. So pretty much what we have now, no labels are required. The second would be requirement of mandatory labeling of products that use GMOs. The third would be allowing voluntary labeling, which I believe could be kind of like a crossroads sort of option. It would allow certain companies to essentially list what they want. And I think that could make both the public and the producers happy, because if a company doesn't want to put it on there, they don't have to, and then the consumer doesn't have to buy it if they want to. and allowing voluntary labeling of products that do not use GMOs, with an accompanying disclaimer noting that the government's judgment about any differences between products that use and do not use GMOs. Here I've included a graph. It's pretty much questions posed by the various forms of policy that we could have in labeling GMOs and some of the options that it gives. So, for example, how are restaurant takeout, bulk, and institutional foods handled? It's including labeling, excluding labeling requirements. It pretty much lists like the primary questions that is on everyone's mind and what options we essentially have. I believe a large portion of the conflict surrounding GMOs, genetic engineering, and even labeling of such involves a lot of consumer confusion and a lot of misrepresentation in the media. The inclusion of labeling systems for GMO products would only create an unfair advantage amongst non-GMO and organic products. Honestly, due to a lot of media manipulation, GMOs kind of get a bad rap. They're seen as something that's unethical and unnatural, when in reality, through things like crossbreeding and crop sharing, we've honestly been producing the ideal plant for centuries. This is just a more direct way of getting the most desirable traits possible. But in all reality, there's actually no real difference between consuming an organic tomato and one that's been genetically modified. If anything, a genetically modified tomato has the potential to be even better for you due to an inherently better trait. So here's my conclusion. I'd like to make a note on the right-hand side. That's the top 10 genetically modified foods. You see canola, soy, corn, rice, tomatoes, potatoes, cottonseed, papaya, peas, and dairy products. But listed, I do have 11 because aspartame, which is the artificial sweetener that a lot of people use, is also genetically modified. In my opinion, the recent increase in the usage of genetically modified crops and organisms in the U.S. demonstrates a steadily growing acceptance of the practice, which is good, because a technology like this, it can do wonders for us. I mean, we've already discussed in class how genetically modified organisms, we can breed things like antibiotics and vaccines within plants and animals. I mean, that's a kind of technology that we just can't ignore. I also believe that the inclusion of the labeling process for GMOs could lead to a perpetuation of the ignorance surrounding the subject of genetic modification. And honestly, there is so much good that could be done with GMOs. We can't afford to risk any potential setbacks due to public backlash. Listed are my sources, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.